Do you remember an event that happened in your youth or that had a major impact on your life?
In Union City, or just period?
In general.
Yeah. I spent 6 months in the Air Force back when we had a draft, and I didn't want to go. I don't like authority, and it was hard for me to go and to put up with all of that, in which you lose your freedom. You don't have any personal thoughts. Everything is dictated to you. But at that time, I did run across a guy who recommended a book called Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand, and that book has had the biggest influence on my life of any incident or any book that I've read. And so you never know where good's going to come from. This was one of the worst few months of my life personally, and but reading that book came out of it, and it's guided my life since I was 23.
If you could leave one message to future generations, what would it be?
I would say be a misfit. You know, the world's not changed by people who are not misfits. The world's not changed by people who are satisfied with the status quo. The people who came to America from England and Europe weren't the people who were satisfied with their government, satisfied with their religion, satisfied with their status in life, but they were misfits. They wanted to get out and do something else. They came here and formed this country, or settled this country. And then the people in the Revolutionary War were misfits. They didn't fit into the way England wanted to govern their colonies. They were misfits, so they changed the world and came up with the Constitution, which is the greatest experiment of human endeavor, I believe, in the history of the world. Strange concept that the people govern the government instead of some hierarchy of royalty or dictatorship telling everybody what to do. It's the reverse. And then the people who settled the West came from Boston and the East Coast. If they'd been happy there, they wouldn't have gone out. But they were misfits. They wanted to get out, and they settled the West. And the people who panned for gold in California were misfits. The people who made the great inventions of the world, the great discoveries. Einstein was a misfit. And I don't mean that that's a negative term. I think it's a positive term, and I would suggest that anybody who wants to accomplish something and get to be the age of 65 and say, I'm really happy with my life, should be a misfit as soon as they can philosophically justify that.
As you look back, what do you wish you had accomplished that you haven't?
I've failed at a lot of things, but I've had I think the most interesting life of anybody I've ever known. Exciting, adventurous. I've been all over the world. I've traveled. I've worked. The business took me literally around the world. It was creative on one side, and it was all business on the other side. I like to do other things that are outside the normal interest of a quote unquote business person. I started playing the piano when I was 65. I started painting, even though I did take some lessons when I was 23. I've done some writing that has been published, and I've been very selfish and have done what I wanted to do, and if it looked like I thought it would be fun, it wouldn't harm someone, I did it. So it's hard for me to really say that there's something that I haven't accomplished. haven't done everything in the world that other people have done, but I'm pretty well satisfied with where I am.
How do you want to be remembered?
I don't. It's not important.
Well,
No, I'll take that back. I want to be remembered as the world's greatest lover.
oh me. Well, do you have any funny stories that you'd like to share?
No, I can't think of any off the top of my head. If you said something that triggered one, I would tell you about it. I don't know.
Well, we know that you have put the Robert and Jenny Kirkland Foundation into high gear with Discovery Park. Would you like to talk about that and what you envision with Discovery Park and the future of this area?
The future of this area, I think, is with the announcement from Goodyear that they're pulling out is economically pretty bleak. I think it's going to be a major impact on the economy. All we can do is to try to get somebody to come back in and fill that void. If companies mean what they say, they place a great value on education. And Union City and Obion County both have always put an extraordinary emphasis on education, and that today more than ever, for example, when a child is born, there's the Reading Railroad that sends every child who signs up a book once a month for 60 months, so that their parent or guardian or someone, sister, brother, can read to them. That should be a great help. There's also, in that age bracket, what I'm going to call a delivery system called Promethean Foundation, which sponsors Pro Kids. Pro Kids gives scholarships to daycare center to needy children from the birth until for 60 months until they go into kindergarten. And Promethean Foundation demands that the daycare centers, who put up their own money to build a daycare center, but demands that they teach academic appreciation and excellence, and also demands that the daycare centers teach character. And it's a tough job to say, how do you teach character? There's all sorts of evidence about character, that it really is as important as anything else, and that it's formed in the early ages, early years. In fact, the years 1 through 3 are more important than the years 4 through 5, the studies we've seen. And it's a shame that the state governments are extending the education system from first grade down to kindergarten and then to age 4 and then to 3. They're going about it backwards. And after that, school systems are doing a good job of increasing the standards. The Boys and Girls Club that we have takes children from first grade or kindergarten, I can't remember which, on through about 12 or 13. We're putting into place now, I say we, the city, Ron Green and the board of Boys and Girls Club is putting into place, I think it's called a club, which takes children after school, ages 13 to 18, or whenever they graduate from high school. That should help. They try to teach them character and appreciation for academics too. In Union City High School, there is a magnet school for academics, which should help children to reach out and be more astute in their learning. And the Rotary Club in Union City gives away around $300,000 worth of college scholarships every year. And if we can have Discovery Park at that point be an inspiration to the kids, and cause, and not just kids but adults too, and to cause them to discover something new outside the borders of Obion County. Then we've opened doors to them that they mentally and that they never would have gone through. We just need to spark that imagination and that discovery of new things at Discovery Park. So I think it's sort of the icing on the cake for the education system in Union City, Northwest Tennessee. If we can accomplish that, and we want it to be fun too, so we've added a entertainment facet to it. So if Discovery Park can do that and add to the experience of learning children in this area, we've done it. The virtue of selfishness is very important to a person. Being happy, and being successful, and never having any guilt if they act selfishly. That's contradictory to anything you've ever been taught by your teachers, your parents,
yes,
even by your church.
But makes sense too, because there is. I mean, I like the misfits analogy, because if you're just, I mean, who's ever just always satisfied? I mean, I guess some people are, but I'm not. I'm one of these people that.
But that adds too is your selfishness, as long as it's not causing harm
To other people.
To other people, then.
Sure, you've got to have a standard of right and wrong within the selfishness. But automatically, selfishness is bad to most people. They say, well, don't be selfish. Sacrifice. Sacrifice for this and this and this. No, when you start sacrificing, you're doing something that has less value than what you wanted to do over here, being selfish. And that's wrong. Ultimately, you sacrifice your life. And you should not do that ever for another person. And so selfishness is so important. If you're selfish, if you're selfless, if you sacrifice, you'll constantly feel guilty and unhappy.
Was that your philosophy in business as well?
Yes. And in business, you always see it's the politically proper thing to do. To say, well, you can start this factory here, we'll create 17 jobs. Well, like that's really the reason. Anybody who creates a business just to create jobs is going to fail. The person who creates business has to be in that business for selfish reasons, and the reason that we generally pick in the United States is to make a profit. And as a byproduct, without even thinking anything about it, you create some jobs for people. So the act of being selfish, it has so many positive byproducts. The act of being selfless has none. That's good. Are we through?
Yeah. But I like that.
Well,
I like that perspective.
Read that book, Atlas Shrugged. The movie's coming out.
What's the name of it?
Atlas Shrugged. Like
Atlas.
Atlas holding up the world.
Shrug. Okay.
Have you heard of it?
I'm gonna go.
I'm Joe Fay.
I'm gonna have to
check on it.
check on
Well,
that.
let me give you a little. It's that thick in paperback.
Okay.
Little bitty print.
Oh.
There's a lot of dialogue in it, a lot of philosophy in it. So it's not a book like John Grisham.
Right. No.
This is the one you get a dictionary. What does that word mean? And you don't just taste it like you do.
And a friend of yours told you to read that, or
in the military? He was from California. Golly, I can't remember his name now. But he said, you ought to read that book. And so I did while I was in the service. I read that book, and it made sense. It cleared up a lot of questions that I had and things that were bothering me about wanting to do one thing, but my past teaching was pulling me in this direction. And so anyway, she wrote several other books. This is the pinnacle of her writing, and it's the deepest and the toughest, and most people skip the most important chapter, which is strictly a philosophical chapter.
Hmm.
And if you do, you never get the real philosophy behind the virtue of selfishness.
Interesting. Have you read it more than once?
Yes. I have. I've practiced it since I was 23. And can't think of a single time that I made mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, but I can't think of a single time that I've felt guilty about a decision that I made, because I just don't do what I just don't do something that has less value to me than something else that has greater value to me.
Right. I'm gonna look it up.
Great. Thank you.
I'm just trying to think. I think you've heard the story of the pink ducks at CBK. Did you ever hear that story?
I don't think I did.
We ordered a container of wooden ducks, like decoys, and I'd seen it overseas, and I picked it up. How much is this stuff? And they told me very inexpensive and well done. Mallard, wonderful, wonderfully done. And those things were retailing for $125, and this thing was just cost little nothing. Oh boy, so I said, let me have that one to take with me, and I'll order what we call a container of them. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a cajillion. I don't know how many a cajillion is, but a container is a cajillion. It came in the back door, and we had a quality inspection process going on. And I had sold thousands of these things from this one sample, going around the country to each show. And the lady came up to me, who was a quality control, and she said, Mr. Kay, we've got a problem. I said, what's that? She said, our first quality check, we only found 2% of these that were good. I said, what's wrong with them? She said, they're pink. She said, look. So, I said, well, nothing is ever as bad as it seems on the first, and nothing is ever as good as it seems at first. I said, well, go do the second and third and fourth step of quality check. So, I don't know whether you're familiar with statistical analysis or not, and I'm not swooped at the big into it. She came back and said, out of all these, we only found about half a dozen that are not pink. Well, what had happened is that they'd put a finishing coat on it over in China, and in between shipping it here, it gotten cold, it gotten hot, and gotten cloudy, and gotten pink.
Change colors.
So,
So it changed the colors of it?
The surface changed color. So, as I used to do, I took problems home with me. I took one of them home with me. So I said, well, what gets rid of, what can we bleach it out? And the sun bleaches things. So I put it outside for a couple of days, and it rained on it. Went out, the sun burnt on it. And went out there, and it all cracked up, and the pink had gone. It looked like an antique. It was so beautiful. Antique. So I went back and said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to, every Monday morning, take 100 of these ducks out of the box and go on top of the building. That's when we were right down here, below some other businesses. Put them on there, and then Friday, go up on top of the roof and check them, and the good ones take down and leave the bad ones up there. And then next Monday, put
some more out.
And don't tell anybody, because my buddies will steal them just to get at me. So we did that. We sold them all. We ended up making a profit out of it. I told that very same story a year or so later. And a person who, let's say, drank a lot, said, let me tell you something. He said, I got to tell you, one Monday morning, I was up in the shopping center, used to be Big Kmart shopping center, whatever, where E.W. James is, and said, I looked over there on top of your building, and there was all these ducks. I said, what is a flock of ducks doing on top
of his building?
Of the building. And forget it, since my imagination, I had too much to drink this weekend. And so, that's I'm thinking of strange things.
Did you ever tell him, or did you just say, "Oh, I don't know what those ducks are doing up there"?
No, I told him I said, well, you know, here's what happened. I told that story earlier, and he told me that.
That he'd seen it.
And we had another story coming. I don't know whether you noticed in windows at Christmas time, there's a little candle lamp about this size. People put in, they plug in the, it's got a brass base, a little white, it's got a light bulb on it. Well, we found a place in China that they would sell us 1 million of them for a good price. So we bought 1 million, came in here, sold them like crazy, shipped out 14,000 to a big firm over in Arkansas, not Walmart, but a big firm over in Arkansas. And about a week later they called and said, take these all back. What's happening? They said they're catching fire. When people are bringing them back, when you plug them in, sometimes they spark in the plug. If you come up to the little thumb switch, turn it on, that sparks sometimes. If that doesn't, it goes up here and the bulb blows up. If that doesn't happen, later on, after they're on, all of a sudden the bulb blows up. Take them all back. So you just got to get it right. You can't sell an electrical item that shocks people.
Or catches fire.
We said, okay, let's check everything, and sure enough, we found that 14% of them were defective. We did a sampling of them. I said, what are we going to do, boss? I said, we're going to check every single one of them before we send them out. How are we going to do that? I said, look, get a bunch. I'm going to simplify this. Get a bunch of extension cords, run some electrical cords out there, get some people and plug them in and see what goes in them.
1 million.
1 million of them.
But we had, we hired, I don't know, 25 or 50 people. Generally, there were women. And
just to come plug.
I had an open door policy that anyone could come see me at any time. One sitting at a desk like this, knocking at the desk, and this lady came in and said, Mr. Kirkland, I just can't take it anymore. Well, what's wrong? And she said, I'm one of the people who are checking these bulbs. And I know only 14% of them are bad, but when we never know when they're going to shock us or not. Plug it in, and I just can't stand it because not all of them do it, but they blow up and I just can't do it. Well, I got tickled. She said, it's not funny. So we had a guy who's Scott Hudgens, who's really a talented guy, rigged up a machine where you would plug it in the machine, and if it were bad, the light bulb would go on. If it was good, it would light up, so it eliminated it.
It's more complex.
It wasn't funny when you're looking at 1 million
Lights.
bulbs. But anyway, looking back, we made it through it. I'm sorry I got off on that.
No, you didn't get off because that's perfect for